What's good, Blake? Are you kidding me? The life of an LSU fan can't be any better than this. I'm telling you, man, we're already at a head coaching search, and your diehard viewers want to talk about gap scheme. That's what I'm all about, baby. Let's go.
All right, so this is why I asked you today, Carter. I asked you today because it's something that we talked about 2 weeks ago. All right, there's three things that I want to say, and I'm going to give you the floor. Number one, don't tell me that LSU doesn't have depth along the offensive line when Marlon Martinez is taking grown-ass men and putting them in the parking lot. I said that, got ridiculed for it. I'm sorry. That man made 330-pound individuals look like toddlers. That's number one. Two, Carter, we talked about gap scheme, and it's something that's been efficient for them and something that they need to get back to. It was fantastic the last 2 weeks. And number three, what changed? So I'm going to give you the floor. I mean, it's something that we talked about 2 weeks ago on this show that they needed to be running. What says you? Why do you think that they went to that, and why are they having so much success?
Well, some of it is Florida's ineptitude on their coaching staff. They struggled a little bit with what Ed Orgeron struggled with, which is making adjustments in games. So a lot of LSU's rushing success, some of it does come down to Florida, but a lot of it came down to a few personnel switches. This always showed up to me on tape. I like this kid a lot out of Colorado, but Cole Taylor was always a big liability as a blocker. And Jack Mashburn was just moving people. Heck, if you wear a neck roll, you better watch out, baby.
I know, bro. I know.
And 82 was fantastic. He really jumped out. Also, let's be really fair here. Ed Ingram is the most hot and cold player, I think,
no doubt,
arguably ever. Like, let's put it this way. Ed Ingram, when he's on, is like really, really good, like a Zach Mettenberger level talent if you were to use a quarterback. But when he's off, I mean, he's like Anthony Jennings.
Zach Mettenberger level of off.
Yeah, it's crazy what we saw on the Kentucky tape compared to what we saw this last week. And I will say, I won't share this player's name, but a former LSU offensive lineman reached out to me and was like, dude, I don't know what Ed Ingram's doing. And then this game against Florida, he mowed people down. It was vicious. So a lot of it was just guys just playing better. And a lot of it just comes down to running counter. And LSU just kept hammering counter, and that worked out. And what's crazy is Max did not play well, and we really needed TDP to carry us. And really, I want this because you have such a wide audience, and I've hammered this point home on the other side of the ball. If you were to list the MVPs of the LSU defense this past weekend, let me ask you this, Blake. Who would you say were the three, and I want everyone watching this, just off the top of your head, who are the three best defensive players for LSU versus Florida? Just off the top of your head.
Cardell Flott.
Right.
I'd say Damone Clark.
Right.
I'm going to split between Neil Farrell and maybe BJ Ojolari. But there was, I mean, we could have that debate, but those would be my three or four.
And all those guys deserve it. And, Blake, you know this as well. This is how it is on my channel, Power Hour LSU. I've always found this to be very interesting. Lafayette people defend their players unlike anything else, man. The 337 defends their players. Like, I mean, I just kept hearing Sage Ryan is like this superstar player, and he was incredible day one. So that was obviously a guy that you could point out as well. But the dude that really flashed to me, and the guy that actually won the game for LSU versus Florida, was Jacqueline Roy. I mean, he's putting together one of the quietest, dominant defensive tackle seasons I think I've ever seen at LSU. And part of the issue is we don't do a good job of talking about pressures compared to sacks.
Right.
But what's very fascinating, I did a whole video on him on my channel. The Dwight McGlothern interception, pick six, is only because Jacqueline Roy had pressure. If not, the ball would have been completed for like 15 yards. And the final touchdown, or the final interception by Damon Clark, he was beat. He was beat. And Blake, you're a former lineman, and all the former linemen know how difficult this is. Jacqueline Roy went through a double team, put the center on his rear end, and forced that ball to be thrown late.
Correct.
That allowed Damon Clark to get the interception. Now, here's the thing, Blake. This is why you do what I did. I know everyone wants to talk about the next head coach, and I know everyone wants to talk about the next whatever. But remember, these players deserve the credit that they deserve. And the one guy who is not getting any credit for winning us this game this past Saturday is a Baton Rouge native who just puts in the work. Jacqueline Roy's not a look at me kind of guy. He's not boisterous. We never really get to hear from him in interview sessions, but God, he can play. He can really play, and I'm so blessed that we're going to get to have him for 2 more seasons, and one more season, and Mason for 2 more seasons after this.
Well, we might get Jacqueline for a couple more. I mean, sometimes, look, the hype is a real thing when you go to the draft. Right. But I agree with you, Carter. I think that, look, what he does and why he's not starting, I think is, look, I don't mean this in a wrong way, but I do think that that's one of the reasons why Ed is fired. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so when you don't play that man who PFF has the number 1 defensive tackle. Actually, I saw today the number 2 interior defensive lineman in the country. Carter, in the country. Jacqueline Roy is the second best graded defensive tackle in the country, and he's not even a starter. That is abysmal. Okay?
Right.
And I agree with you. And look, we're going to get to the coaching search and some of the things with Ed in a minute. But look, even on both sides of the ball, like, Carter, have you ever seen a defense, and look, this happened last year, that could go and get 9 turnovers in 2 weeks last year and have 4 interceptions this week and still give up 42 points? I mean, it blows my mind how hot and cold this team is and how inconsistent they are. What puts you in that? Like, what is – I know what it is to me. I think it's coaching from aspect, but is it simple as saying, hey, coaching is too inconsistent and the players show it on the field? Is that why that happens?
Well, here's the thing that's really funny about what you said is consistency. The defense is consistent in a bad way, in that they consistently show the opposing offenses the same looks over and over, right?
Right.
And people want to. Okay. So here's a funny thing about this, right? We said this the last time I was on here, and I'm sure we got some hate mail for it. I know I did. Oh, we all love it. We all love Ed Orgeron. We do, right? But a big reason why he is no longer the coach. This is a guy who was talented enough to win plenty of more national championships at LSU. The reason why it did not continue was the hubris as far as your defensive scheme. You just can't beat people every snap, right? As much as we love Jacqueline Roy, he can't do what he did on every snap. BJ can't win on every snap. Mason can't win on every snap. So what do you have to do defensively? Well, you got to throw different looks. And the issue that the LSU defense continued to have, and the reason why our defense over the past couple of seasons, and you notice I said our defense, we've all gone through this together. A big reason why our LSU defense has not looked great is because it's static. If you look at it in a frame, okay, and anyone can do this. You don't have to be a football expert to do this. You can look at the defense and you can see where everybody's going to go. Okay, now do the same thing with Georgia's defense and Alabama's defense, or even Kentucky's defense to a certain degree. Those guys do a good job of not showing you the same thing over and over. And that is what ultimately did the Ed Orgeron era in. And there's a lot of other things. But this is something I don't like what the media can do sometimes and what people can make things out to be as far as Ed Orgeron is concerned. Yes, there were off-the-field things that Ed Orgeron did not handle correctly. And people are digging into this man's personal life, and those things are very relevant. But the bottom line is if you win football games, people don't care. You want to keep a locker room together? win. Have the scheme where people that are actually going out there and playing at 20 miles per hour and risking their lives for the LSU Tigers, guys don't play as hard when they know that the scheme is not going to work.
Correct.
So I want this to be clear from my vantage point. Yes, those off the field things were major issues with what happened to our dear beloved LSU Tigers over the past year and a half. But the bigger issue, and it's always going to be the bigger issue, is the scheme was bad and the actual coaching was bad. Because if that was fine, Ed Orgeron would still be the head coach right now.
I said two things, Carter, and then I want to get more into the coaching search and recruiting with you, because I know that you keep up with it. And look, I try to keep up with it, but talking to one 18-year-old today, I almost wanted to throw up, but anyway. I've called this defense vanilla or wafer because they're so vanilla. Okay. I mean, look, and I think that's a part of even on offensively that I can make the argument from a run blocking scheme. Carter, if you're running zone right or zone left and the running back's on the right, as a defensive lineman, I know what's coming. I can penetrate and hit other gaps and move with the offensive lineman, which makes him look like trash. And then when they don't know what's coming, and you got physical dudes like Marlon Martinez that are literally pushing dudes around, it makes a big difference. When's the last time, Carter, that you've done a film breakdown? Very quickly, and I want to get to recruiting in the coaching search. Yeah. But very quickly, when's the last time you saw a blitz from LSU's defense? I'm being right. And so with that being said, the last time they did it was Auburn when they try to blitz Bo Nix. If you remember, they jump it out in the flat, they get a big gain, and then they go and score, and then they don't ever do it again because they're so scared. So I agree with you. I get hate mail for that all the time, but they're like a wafer. They're vanilla. Okay. So I just, and look, and to your point about and you're right. Some of the off the field stuff doesn't matter. Like, and let's not even go there, but Miami was doing stuff in the late 80s and early 90s that people were rolling their eyes at, but they were winning, so it didn't matter. And I think that you're right there. So that's a whole we need a whole hour for that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll find some time to get into that. But I do want to get into you with recruiting. And look, recruiting is a lifeblood that fuels the dreams of champions. Carter, I know Aaron Anderson has decommitted, but how crucial is it when whatever that day in November is, the last game in November, the Sunday after A&M, that they announce a head coach for recruiting, in your opinion?
Yeah, so this is obviously a very complicated question, right? Because
it is.
We are talking about the psyche of, like you talked about, 17 and 18-year-old kids. So on my channel, I don't interview recruits. I just don't. I talk about recruiting, and ironically, I know a few players in this next cycle because their decision. There's so many different factors that go into it, but there are a few things that do tend to help LSU out in this aspect. The first is this 2021 cycle is the best cycle since LSU's legendary 2017 cycle.
No doubt.
The 2017 class will be the best recruiting class ever. It's going to be really hard to ever beat what those guys did. But the 2021 cycle is really good. I'll tell you this, the 2021 cycle. So for those that don't know, that's Mason, Jack, BTJ, Malik, and Garrett Dellinger. Yeah. So this class, this class is really special. So let's mark that down. That's obviously a really good thing. So that's going to help out this next recruiting cycle, which may not be as good because you have not only younger players, but guys that are not only playing well, but are going to be with you for at least 2 more seasons. Also, the transfer portal, I do think, will help out LSU because I do think, for those that don't know, they are putting a new amendment in where you can bring in 7 transfers now and it not count against your 25. The reason why that's going to help out LSU more than some other schools is LSU is going to be more aggressive offering Louisiana 3 stars, which I've done research on this. It's not as scientific and as deep as I would like it to be, but Louisiana 3-stars do hit at an extremely high rate when they go to LSU. And I mean, there's famous examples, obviously, of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but then there's good role players like a Foster Moreau or Duke Riley. So more of those types of guys will come into the cycle, and that will help out LSU for this next cycle. So do I think it's important to have a head coach ready to go by the early signing period? I do, but I also don't think it's as big of a deal breaker as people make it out to be, because I'm not sure if, rushing to get a coach that you don't like just to have it by that deadline. And I understand a lot of people will think that deadline is so important. I'm not so sure that it is, Blake, because of those reasons.
It's hard to
disagree. You can disagree.
What I was going to say is it's hard to argue your point. Okay. The only pushback that I would give is only for this, though, Carter. It's because this class is so damn good. Bro, you got just offense. The biggest thing that I don't think people realize in this Ed Orgeron being fired is because you have guys like Will Campbell, Emory Jones. And look, I don't think that they'll decommit, but God bless it if they do. Okay, because that's the problem that LSU has had is getting offensive linemen. And look, Mario Cristobal, the guy that's high on people's list to be the next LSU head coach. He came in here, Carter, twice and got 5-star offensive linemen. There were top 5 picks or top 10 picks in the NFL. That's the kind of stuff that I'm worried about, especially when everybody says, Carter, the O-line ain't that good, man. And then we have to sit here and break down that, look, they're actually not that bad. Yeah. So the only pushback I give on that is just because, look, bro, it is so deep. And look, I do say this. The Aaron Anderson, although I think Aaron Anderson is extremely talented, I still think that you got guys out there that are really good. And I'm not going to say you can replace, but guys, man, like this thing, Malik Neighbors, for an example. Okay, not a really heavily recruited guy. Look what he's doing right now. So I'm not worried about the skill position as much as I am worried about the big daddies in the trenches. Carter, let's spend about another 5 to 6, 7 minutes just about this coaching search. In your mind, when you look at it for a good coach? Now, I've said that, look, Mel Tucker's going to get a look. Mario Cristobal is going to get a look. James Franklin's going to get a look, even though it's really tough. There's a lot of great coaches out here that are going to get looks to be the next head coach. What says who if you were Scott Woodward, who does Carter Bryant like, and who would Carter Bryant go after? And I know it's tough because you don't ever really know, but who's someone you always kept your eyes on?
So I've always said this. I'm not the best coaching search guy. It's such a hard thing to do. It really is. Right. And we're lucky. I mean, Scott Woodward is obviously really, really good at it. So yeah, that's obviously key. One more thing on the recruiting thing. The only thing that will cause me to just lose it is obviously Will Campbell and Emory Jones, because they do play such important positions. But Walker Howard is a national championship level quarterback. No doubt. If for some reason these Notre Dame things actually happen, that's where you go into a ball and cry your eyes out. As great as Aaron Anderson is, I mean, heck, JoJo Earle's like my highest rated wide receiver ever that I've ever high school evaluated. He was that freaking great. Well, he didn't come, and LSU got Malik Neighbors instead, and he's really good. So, I mean, you're never going to run out of wide receivers at LSU. But anyway, as far as the head coaching candidacy is concerned, I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be basic. I know everyone likes deep outside the box things. I'm going to be a basic Becky here. I'm going pumpkin spice coffee. I mean, every basic thing you could say about an individual, I'm about to say right now. Lane Kiffin's my number one candidate. I don't know how you feel about that, Blake. He's my number one.
The way that I feel about this, and I kind of started my opening monologue, Carter, about this, is I like Lane Kiffin as a head coach. Actually, quite honestly, I actually kind of love him as a or as a coach, because I think he definitely 100% does things for you offensively that you can't replicate with a lot of different coaches. But then, and I know that this isn't his fault, but then you have situations like Tennessee fans throwing cans of mustard and golf balls at him because of the things that he's done off the field. And Carter, for me, I feel like this hire has to be more of a culture fit, right? Like, and I hate the word culture, but maybe even just a good fit, because we don't, especially after everything that's going on right now with Les Miles, with Ed Orgeron. It feels like you need a good coach that's buttoned up and doesn't grow beards like me and shaves his face like a real man, I guess, as some people say, and is kind of buttoned up, but is a good coach. However, Carter, he's a freaking offensive guru. I mean, if you hire him, with these LSU athletes and with Walker Howard coming in, Carter, and he hires a good defensive coach, Carter, it could be over. Like, it could realistically be over.
Yeah, and that's me. Like, I'm a ceiling guy. Give me the guy with the highest ceiling, and Lane's ceiling is through the roof. Now you have guys that are more buttoned up. So, for instance, if Mel Tucker was a coach of Ole Miss, if Dave Aranda was a coach of Ole Miss, they're not throwing golf balls at him. They're not throwing vape pens at him. They're not throwing overalls at him, or whatever they were throwing at him. How would you throw overalls anyway? I'm an idiot. But that would be what a
Look,
Tennessee
I grew up in the country, and I still don't know.
but that's the thing, right? And that does come along with Lane Kiffin, and I've battled with that as far as, like, I just released my coaching hot board on this channel, or on my channel, right before I came on here. And look, Lane obviously is really talented, but this is the key thing, right? Lane Kiffin also is very analytically sound as far as when to go for it on fourth down. Dave Aranda is as well. James Franklin's history with that is actually pretty good as well. And here's what I'll say to all the viewers that watch your channel. There's not many things you have as a head coach that you 100% control. You don't know if the players you recruit are going to turn out to be great. You don't know if the coaches that you hire are going to turn out to be great. Right. You don't know if the scheme you're going to run for the game against Ole Miss or the game against Alabama is going to work. However, something that you have 100% control of as a coach is when to go for it on fourth down, is when to use your timeouts. It's how you control games between the headset and all those things. And I go back to what I said earlier about Ed Orgeron, right? He was not good in that department.
Horrible. That's all what it was. Horrible.
Okay, there are things he's better at. Obviously recruiting is one of those things. It got to the point, though, where the rest of the SEC got better and games became more 50-50 in nature. So when you make bad decisions, such as punting the football too often or not letting Cade York try a field goal from 58 yards out in perfect conditions versus Auburn, only for them to get the football back and drive down the field and get a field goal themselves, which resulted in a 6-point swing in that game. Those things, I know that was a lot to take in, but that was a huge bad decision that he made. Lane Kiffin just always goes for it. And for everyone out there that's watching this or listening to this, however you're consuming this, more often than not, you shouldn't punt. It's amazing what the math actually says about going for it on fourth down. And looking at Dave Aranda's history with that and looking at Lane Kiffin's history with that, albeit it's just this year, those guys are really good at those things. And ultimately, I care about you as a football coach, because if you as a football coach wins football games, culture will take care of itself. Everyone being happy will take care of itself.
That's why you're the YouTube GOAT. I mean, nobody's better at you in breaking down film, talking about this. And look, everybody's in the chat saying Ruffino and Bryant 2024 for LSU, coaching. I mean, look, we should do it, Carter. Just throwing it out there. Look, I'll even go on the bottom. Carter Ruffino ticket. How about that?
You want to know what's funny about that, Blake? Though, is I mean, look, I give Ed. I know I've been very, very critical of Ed Orgeron this past year. I love this man. Like, it's a lot different when you're actually between the headset. And I've never actually been in that spot. I think about it all the time. And here's something else that's really fascinating about this, Blake, is the worst coach in the NFL right now between the headset, as far as fourth down decision-making is concerned. I want you to give it your best guess. Who is the absolute worst? According, I saw one analytic model that actually rated this guy as the worst in the NFL. Just give it your best guess.
I'm going to say Bill Belichick.
It's Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time. So the thing is, people get these things wrong all the time. The best of the best. I'm telling you this, the end of Clemson-Syracuse was the worst coached fourth quarter between Dabo Swinney and Dino Babers, guys that make a lot of money, guys that are really well respected in this profession. They both were horrible. It's hard. What we're talking about, being a coach, it's really hard. There's so many different things that you have to be able to do. So while I am critical, I always acknowledge what these guys do under heavy pressure is obviously, really difficult to actually accomplish.
Carter, you're fantastic, bro, and I love you. And we got to bring you on more and more often. Tell everybody where they can catch you. I know that everybody knows about the Power Hour, but just in case some Rudy Poo doesn't know, tell everybody where they can catch you.
Go on ahead, Power Hour LSU on YouTube. I give my full coaching board. There was one name that we didn't talk about that I give on that list, and that's what we do. We just do deep LSU football breakdowns. I'm not smart enough to do baseball or basketball or any of that, so we just it's just LSU football all the time. And Blake, always, man, you rep my dog, man. I always appreciate the booger bands. So for those that don't know, Blake is a fan of dogs. We're a big dog channel over at Power Hour LSU.
Oh, look what I have here.
Look at that, man.
Is that a Jerry Stovall signed card? Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's very close to my heart. You cannot have this back, Carter Bryant. I'm just letting you know.
I know. Dude, what's crazy about that card is it's an on-card autograph. So that makes it, and that's a legend, man. I mean, Mark does have book bands. I remember that. What's interesting is, I'm big into football cards. That's all I do is football cards and LSU football. An on-card autograph of, Jerry Stovall, man, that's just so freaking awesome, man. But I wanted to give it to someone that I know would appreciate the history, because my knowledge of like pre-2000 LSU football is awful. Okay. I know about like Charles Alexander and obviously Kev Falk or guys I look up to, but dude, there's so much history, pre the modern era LSU with Paul Dietzel and the Bandits and, all these